Hello and welcome to another Monday. And what is Monday?
It's the start of another week of a dreary time. The weekend is gone and we're all miserable. And
No.
What?
No, we're not.
Really?
It's Marc's Miniature Monday.
Oh, well, I feel very happy now. That means we get to talk about miniatures and Marc.
We do.
And Monday?
And there's never a better day than a day where we get to talk about me.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
Okay, so this project I want to talk about today is my these Persians. So these are ancient Persians from, I believe it's 500 BC to 330 BC.
Okay, yeah, you did your research on
I
these.
did my research on these, yeah.
So these are some new Victrix plastics, aren't they?
They are.
And they're very nice.
They are fantastic. I'm actually, the more I get to paint in the Victrix range, the bigger of a fan I am of these, to be honest. So here we have two different forms. It's the same mount, but the riders are different.
Yeah.
We have the Unarmoured and we have the Armoured version.
Yes, and they come in two different sets, don't they? They're not mixed together.
Yeah, they
so
do.
is it 12 to a pack?
I honestly can't remember.
We'll get Joe to throw up a, you're wrong, James, it's actually this many.
James
in a
is
pack.
wrong. James gave me these sprues as well. I have no idea what is in the pack. So one of the really great things about these miniatures, before we get to talk about painting them, is that on the website they give you an idea as to how to convert them to have bows as well.
Yes.
So I'm a big fan of where you can very quite easily tweak a range so that you can do different things
more
with
options.
them. Yeah, and speaking of options, there are so many to build these miniatures with. As you can see even from these four that we've got, each one of these miniatures is different.
Yes.
And I'm a big fan of that.
And there's 4 different mounts altogether, is that right?
4 different mounts. These are the 4 different mounts.
And they're very dynamic.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the mount with the lion pelt on there.
Yeah, you've been obsessing over lion
I have
pelt
been
for the last few days.
I have been. Yeah.
Is it just because it meant you didn't have to do freehand on the saddle?
I actually quite enjoyed doing the freehand on the saddle. It was more that I was speaking with Dan and Dan was like, oh, let's get into this. Let's do a tutorial on how to paint the lion pelt, because that throughout history we've had riders who, just to show how much of a hero they are, they go butcher a poor animal and then sit on its carcass.
Sounds good. Yeah.
So I went to town on that one a little bit.
It's a much more friendly way to show what a hero you are.
Yeah.
Painting a miniature carcass.
Painting a miniature dead carcass.
So shall we take a closer look at some of these?
Yeah, let's take a look at these, yeah. So this guy, before I start talking about him, was glued on, and obviously the glue's atrocious and it didn't really...
You'd be docking your pay for that one. Yeah.
Or maybe just purchase me a better glue.
Oh, that seems like such an easy solution.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
But to be honest, it's almost ideal that he's not fixed in place. It means I can show him more effectively.
Yeah. Do you want to show him and then the mount, or the mount and then him?
Let's look at the mount first.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that, because I actually really enjoyed painting this light grey horse. Okay. So this one, I stippled a little bit of lighter colour on the fur there to give it a more of a natural appearance. But generally speaking, the mount was really enjoyable to paint. I started off with an airbrush, gave it a zenithal, and then used glazes to shade down to create an impression of like darker fur on the legs and darkness underneath. The saddle itself was really straightforward to paint. It was blue highlighted up with glazes to create a kind of more smoothly textured surface, and then a tiny bit of detailing on the bottom there.
Did you use reference? Because I know you did a bit of research time for these ones.
Yeah, so I spent quite a bit of effort ensuring that these were painted effectively and historically accurate. So if there's any errors, I'm not going to blame Osprey.
That's kind of the catch-all get out. Is like, well, Osprey did it.
Osprey is. I'm not going to blame those. If there's any errors, it is on me, obviously.
Yeah. But we'll put the name of the book that you used.
Yeah, it
is
a wonderful reference piece. And so I use those for the colours in particular. So for the colours for the saddle and for the rider, and an indication of what mounts they enjoy to ride. So the riders were very particular, and the wealthy riders like to ride lighter horses, which seems to be something throughout history.
Yeah.
There seemed to be a degree of prestige associated with riding a lighter coloured horse. So really cool mount to paint, very enjoyable miniature to work on. You can see the details are really crisp. On the reins as well there. It's actually quite an easy miniature to work with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting one, because when I first saw the horses, they looked quite low because they've got such a spread leg thing. They were actually sitting quite low, and I worried that they wouldn't look imposing. But once they're built and the riders are on, they just look really dynamic and dramatic and quite imposing because of that, I suppose. So.
I also think as well, and I'm assuming that Victrix were aiming for this, a lot of the horses, the mounts, were smaller than what we're used to as well, in contemporary mounts. So I'm assuming that was something that Victrix, who tend to be quite accurate with their work, were thinking of as well. So really enjoyed working on that mount. Yeah,
very cool. And we're on to the rider.
So the rider himself, as you can see, he's wearing a form of body armour. So this is a simple mail and made of a bronze material. Again, he's wearing purple clothing, which and yellow yellow footwear, which again Osprey were highly instrumental in determining on this colour palette.
It's quite interesting because I think you've done maybe a slightly muted tone to those materials, which gives it an interesting look. It's not that really vibrant brightness that sometimes you see in ancient armies.
Yeah, I wanted them to appear quite natural. Yes. Which is one of the ways I enjoy painting. I like natural tones. Obviously, purples, blues, and yellows aren't the most natural tone, but if you can just mute it down slightly, then it has more of a kind of real feel to it than some of the ways of painting miniatures. The purple itself was incredibly straightforward to paint. It was a zenithal highlight, which on top of that I airbrushed a purple ink. It was that simple.
Very simple.
That simple. Very quick to do, and I just did a tiny bit of stippling on the top of the surface just to pull out the extreme high points. That easy. Sure. Again, with the armour as well, that was a simple paint of a silver over the mail, and then I applied a wash of sepia wash.
To sort of brass it down.
To brass it down, and it was that straightforward. And I love painting like that. It's really effective, really quick. Then just picked out a few of the different sections there with the silver again to just give a bit of a pop on the highlights.
Sure.
But nice and straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of becoming a recurring thing where we'll talk about you started with the zenithal airbrushing thing. It's worth pointing out that you don't need an airbrush to do that.
No, you don't. You can do it with a dry brush.
You can do it with a dry brush or with a rattle can. Yeah. A dry brush is actually really effective, and sometimes even after you've done a zenithal, you can dry brush a pure white to catch the edges.
Very much so.
And then that glaze over the top can be applied by a brush as well.
You can even do a zenithal with a normal brush and standard paints. It will take you an age.
Yeah, it's maybe not the time.
I would only do that if you're painting a display miniature and you really want to get into. And it's a good process to learn yourself where highlights would be.
Sure.
But it's not as effective as the other approaches. From especially when you start
when you're
or when you're painting an army. Yeah, don't do it for an army. So you really enjoyed working on this guy. So the next miniature here we're going to look at is one of the unarmoured ones, who looks somewhat like he's wearing his pyjamas, admittedly. The clothing is really soft, it's not very structured, and again, it's quite vibrant colour tones. So you've got, historically, these were, the yellow was made using saffron, the violet purple was from clam shells, was it?
I don't know why you're asking me.
So,
I know for sure, having used saffron before, that saffron will stain things very effectively, because I've got some tea towels that are well out of service because of that. So
this royal purple, it was produced using seashells of some description. I'm sure we'll find out and put that on here. And you can imagine how expensive these clothes must have been at the time in particular. I mean, even today, if you're using saffron to produce the pigment, it's going to be expensive.
Yeah, it's always been an interesting thing about the colour throughout history and the price of that. Like, you've got your religious documents that are all these vibrant colours and they're all holy, but those colours cost a fortune and didn't go to the community.
More than a house.
Yeah.
So you can get some kind of semblance of understanding of how wealthy these riders must have been, or how wealthy their patron, the king, must have been to be able to equip them in these colours.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, this guy was painted using a zenithal highlight and inks over the top. The yellow was painted very similar, but in the sense we started from a high yellow point and then just shaded it down using yellows.
Did you go to orange or browns with the yellow?
I went to sepia, so kind of an in-between, in essence. So you're kind of right in both accounts there. So I did that on on the garb which he's got on there. Again, you can see the mount. Love the detail on there. Really nice, simple kind of musculature on the mount there. And yeah, really enjoyed painting that one.
And a darker tone as well for it.
Darker tone horse there, so clearly this guy's not as wealthy as the Armoured guy. Yeah, that's what we're going to go with. Okay,
and then this is one more of the Armoured ones.
One of the Armoured ones, and this is the infamous chap with the lion pelt.
Yes.
So this is the hero of the bunch, clearly. Yeah, and one of the things I really want to talk about with this individual is the skin tone which I worked on.
Sure.
As you can see, it's a darker tone than is often painted with historical miniatures. And how I created this was I took a standard Caucasian flesh tone and I added a little. I'm not a fan of the colours of the names of the colours from Scale Colour. This was called Arabic shade, and I added a touch of that into there, and a small touch of a brown paint as well into there, and that gave it just that kind of darker hint.
Yeah.
And applied that on there, shaded it down using a glaze of the Arabic shadow, and then a deep recess of a brown glaze just into the recesses there, and then a slight highlight using a Caucasian flesh tone. It's that simple. It gives you a different hint than what you would traditionally get if you're just using the traditional flesh tones from most miniature paint manufacturers, which is generally speaking pinky and warm and red.
Yes.
And that's not the colour we're going for here.
No, that's true, and it really is. It's a really effective finish that you've got on it, and I think it would be quite versatile for other figures as well. So well worth picking up on that.
I think we might actually put something together for that one at some point.
Yeah, I think there will be an article on these ones because you took lots of progress photos as you were doing it. So no, that's really good, and hopefully we can throw more Victrix figures your way as time goes on.
Yeah, honestly, every Victrix miniature I've worked on has been an absolute pleasure, and
we'll need to get you a full unit at some point so you can really luxuriate in just...
I'd very happily do that, yeah.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
This video has been brought to you by WI Prime, Wargames Illustrated magazine's online members club. View more videos or find out more about WI Prime by following these links.